Welcome to today's webinar, Showcasing Safe and Accessible Mobility Programs to Assist at-Risk Youth. We are delighted that you're joining us today. But before we begin, a very special thank you to today's webinar sponsor, HopSkipDrive. They are the company driving the $30 billion school transportation industry into the future and solving one of the most pressing challenges facing families and communities in America. You'll hear more about it from our first panelist, who is Joanna McFarland. You can also expect to hear from Emily Davidson and Megan Ramey. We'll do introductions prior to each person. Our first panelist is Joanna McFarland, CEO of HopSkipDrive. Before co-founding HopSkipDrive in 2014, she spent 15 years in product management, where she built and scaled businesses for top technology brands. Prior to that, she spent time in investment banking and private equity. She has an MBA from Stanford and a BS from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and 2 boys. So welcome, Joanna.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Governor's Highway Safety Association for the opportunity to discuss mobility programs impacting our nation's most vulnerable youth. I'm Joanna McFarland, co-founder and CEO of HopSkipDrive. We are a technology company supporting 10,000 schools nationwide, making student transportation more efficient, effective, and equitable through a network of highly vetted caregivers on wheels and AI-based software. I founded this company 10 years ago, together with 2 other working moms with 8 kids between us. We created the company with safety at the center of everything we do, constantly asking ourselves, what would it take for me to put my child in a HopSkipDrive ride? At the heart of our mission is ensuring equal access to educational opportunities for all students, particularly those facing the greatest transportation challenges, children experiencing homelessness, those in foster care, and students with disabilities. Today, I am excited to share more about our work through the Equitable Access to Transportation Advisory Council, EATAC, and how we are innovating to improve safe transportation options for at-risk youth. EATAC was launched to understand transportation gaps for vulnerable populations, to examine connections between disruptions to safe, reliable school transportation and their impact on students' lives, and to ensure transportation policies and programs are inclusive and meet the needs of overlooked communities. To get there, we've brought together voices from a broad spectrum of stakeholders, including child welfare advocates, education experts, and transportation safety professionals like GHSA to address the mobility barriers that at-risk youth face. Far too often, at-risk youth lack access to reliable transportation. And for them, a missed ride can mean missing a class, a critical appointment, or access to opportunity. Our goal with EATAC is to close those gaps, ensuring that no child is left behind due to inadequate transportation options. Today, these barriers disproportionately affect communities that are already marginalized. Whether it's rural areas where transportation infrastructure is sparse or urban neighborhoods where economic disparities limit access to safe options, we see time and again how these factors compound the challenges our youth face. Take Georgina, for example. Georgina was a foster student in Los Angeles who was at her 4th high school in 4 years. She was waking up at 4 a.m. to take 2 different public buses 2 hours to get to school. She was exhausted and was on the verge of dropping out. Because of our contract with LA County and our partnership with child welfare, we were able to get Georgina to school in 20 minutes, meaning she could sleep in and leave at 7 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. She could stay after school without worrying about having to grab the bus home, which enabled her to get tutoring and take credit remediation courses, allowing her to graduate on time and enter community college. And most importantly, she was able to stay at that high school where her siblings, who were in different foster placements, were also attending school. So she got to have the stability of being with her siblings and her family. That's the difference that equitable access to education and options for transportation can provide. At EATAC, we engage diverse stakeholders to drive collective action and change. This comprehensive approach allows us to advocate for policy changes and programmatic improvements that make transportation safer and more accessible for at-risk youth. And students like Georgina are just one example of why we wake up every single day energized to do this work. By engaging with diverse stakeholders, including child welfare advocates, educators, transportation experts, and policymakers, our goal is to ensure that our solutions are well-rounded, targeted, and informed by the realities communities face today. Over the course of this year, EATAC has published a comprehensive transportation report and conducted a survey of education and transportation professionals to dive deeper into solutions. This ongoing research, combined with our unwavering commitment to safety, guides everything we do. We understand that transportation safety for youth goes beyond vehicle safety. It includes protecting them from bullying, harassment, or unsafe environments while they travel. Through data-driven approaches and partnerships with local law enforcement, community organizations, and safety experts, we're creating safer transit experiences that account for these holistic needs. One key area where we are focusing our efforts is the use of innovative transportation models. At HopSkipDrive, we tailor transportation options to be flexible, safe, and reliable. We find that flexibility and innovation that we bring to our school district partners is uniquely well suited to meet the needs of highly mobile students like foster youth and students experiencing homelessness, as well as others who may require non-traditional transportation solutions. While innovative solutions are crucial, their successful implementation relies on strong partnerships and supportive policies at the state level. This is where the vital role of state highway safety offices comes into play. Through partnerships with state agencies, we are identifying opportunities to pilot new mobility solutions, improve data collection on transportation safety for at-risk youth, and secure funding that expands access to safe rides. EATAC will continue advocating for policies that prioritize youth safety in transportation planning. And as we expand, we're focusing on 3 key areas. 1, aligning our goals with state-level initiatives and national priorities, such as tackling chronic absenteeism. 2, ensuring that resources needed to protect at-risk youth are readily available. 3, advocating for expanded state budgets and for transportation programs. By addressing these areas, we're aiming to keep equity at the center of all conversations about transportation accessibility and mobility. As we work together to improve mobility for at-risk youth, it is critical that we continue sharing data, resources, and best practices. I encourage state highway safety offices to collaborate with programs like EATAC to address the unique transportation needs of at-risk youth in your states. Through these partnerships, we can ensure that safe, equitable transportation options are available for all youth, regardless of their circumstances. The work we are doing through EATAC is just one part of a larger, necessary effort to create a more equitable and safe transportation ecosystem for at-risk youth. I look forward to working alongside all of you to make a meaningful difference in these youth's lives. Thank you again for having me today.
Joanna, thank you for your presentation and for establishing EATAC. So if you turn your camera off, we're going to welcome Emily Davidson, the Executive Director of the Ohio Traffic Safety Office and Chair of the Ohio Traffic Safety Council. Prior to joining the Ohio Traffic Safety Office in 2021, she served in administrative roles at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. She earned her law degree from Cleveland Marshall College of Law, and she's here today to share one way that Ohio is expanding access to driver education to teens. Welcome, Emily. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'd like to share a little bit about Ohio's efforts to expand access to driver education for low-income teens in our state. In 2022, a study came out from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia that looked at crash rates for newly licensed drivers aged 16 to 19 in Ohio. It identified that drivers that are first licensed at age 16 or 17 are less likely to be in a serious injury or fatal crash in the first year of licensure than those that are licensed for the first time at 18 and 19. We know what distinguishes those 2 age groups in Ohio, and that is driver's education and GDL. In Ohio, first-time drivers under the age of 18 have to go through a driver's education course, and the GDL restrictions apply to those drivers until they reach age 18. Despite the safety benefits of getting licensed at 16 or 17, we know that many people are still waiting until they're over 18 to become licensed, as much as half of the population here in the state. So this research led us to establishing our 3 priority areas for driver's education. The first is making driver's education more accessible. In Ohio, teen driver training can cost anywhere from $300 to $800, and we want to reduce barriers such as cost, location, and wait times that prevent students from taking driver's education currently. Our second goal was to strengthen the curriculum so that the training that new drivers do get is the best that it can be. And three, we want to increase the capacity for driver training schools to handle the additional students that we anticipate putting into the process. So I'm going to focus in on expanding accessibility to driver's education today. While we look at driver's education as a traffic safety initiative, it also soon became clear that there were many other benefits, especially for low-income teens who can complete driver's education with a scholarship. These other benefits help to bring partners to the table from high school and career tech schools. There's been a big push in Ohio for developing career readiness in high schools, and a lack of a driver's license can be a huge barrier to this, especially in rural parts of the state. Students can sometimes get high school graduation credits for completing driver's education programs, which was another benefit. And we also know that there's a crime prevention feature to licensure as well. We've heard from our juvenile court judges in the state that a high number of the driving without a license cases they handle are driving without a license cases. A juvenile judge recently told me that over 20% of the traffic cases that she handles a year are driving without a license. And we know that the recent data for Ohio shows that nearly a quarter of fatal crashes where the teen driver was at fault, that teen driver was actually unlicensed. So one of our approaches to increasing access was to create our Drive to Succeed program. This is a grant-based scholarship initiative to help low-income youth obtain driver's education. Our focus is the student who likely wouldn't have been able to afford driver's education without a scholarship. We funded this with state funding, but still had some procurement limitations. Because of this, we set the grant up to provide a lump sum to the awarded agencies. The grantees established their own processes and criteria for eligibility within our guidelines. Then they worked directly with driver training schools to pay for the students to attend. We also provided 2 surveys that students who receive a scholarship must complete, a pre-training and a post-training survey. Gauging the effectiveness of this program was crucial, as it should help us to ensure the effectiveness of the approach and to ensure up long-term funding for the program. Oops, too fast. So we used a competitive award process to select our grantees, but we did focus in on these areas. The main focus was the jurisdiction poverty rate, or the poverty population. We also wanted to cover as much of the physical state as possible, covering the 4 quadrants in both rural and urban areas. And another major factor for consideration was if we thought the application could be successful, would they be able to stand up a program and use the funds in accordance with the grant to award these scholarships. And we also looked at the physical reach of the agency. Some of the agencies that applied had jurisdiction in multiple counties, which expanded the reach of our grant and really expanded how far those dollars could go in different parts of the state. And finally, we wanted to make sure that private driver training schools that were used were varied, both for a fairness approach, but also to avoid overwhelming any one school when we already have capacity issues throughout the state. So we offered the grants in 2 phases, a smaller pot of funding in 2023, then $2.5 million in to round out the second phase of funding earlier this year. After completing the RFP and selection process for the most recent phase, we awarded the $2.5 million to 35 different agencies to award these driver training scholarships to low-income students. If each agency is successful in using all of their funds in accordance with the grant program, we do anticipate that 5,500 additional students will get driver's training through this program. So in total, we have awarded $3 million in funds for these scholarships in the last 2 years. So I mentioned the surveys. This has been really crucial to our program so that we can gauge the effectiveness. We're a year in, so I wanted to share some data from those student surveys. So far, we've had over 1,600 students take the pre-survey. 60% of students say that they wouldn't have been able to complete driver's education without a scholarship, while 85% listed the cost of driver's driver training as the most important reason why they wouldn't have taken it. And 58% also listed the cost of being a licensed driver as a barrier. And then from our post-survey, we've only had 361 students complete that at this point, and that's because it does take, about 6 months to go through the driver training program. But from those 361 students, 96% of students agreed that driver training made them more confident in their ability to drive, while 70% plan to take their driver's license test immediately after completing, which we see both of those numbers as a success. Thank you for your time today. I wanted to end and share some of our testimonials of the impact that the scholarship program has had. As you can see here, directly from some students and parents, that these kids are able to get jobs, especially in rural parts of the state where there's no access to public transit. They're able to help their families, getting students or getting siblings to doctor's appointment, getting to school. It's really, the feedback we've gotten has been really, that it's been really beneficial to a lot of these students throughout the state. And we're really excited to be able to support those students. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. The Drive to Succeed program really sounds incredible and very replicable by other state highway safety offices. So you've given them a little bit to think about. Our final presentation is by Megan Ramey, who you may have seen at GHSA's annual meeting that we just had in Indianapolis. She is the Safe Routes to School manager of Hood River County in Oregon after 10 years of kid-centric transportation advocacy. She was born in Madison and experienced a diverse childhood, both as a free-range kid in northern Wisconsin and a teen in the car-dependent Atlantic suburbs. What she calls her advocacy boot camp for livable streets in Boston. After that, she moved to Hood River, seeking that lifestyle, and she's passionate about safe routes to school demonstration projects, engaging youth and families in planning processes, and using school bike buses, after-school clubs, and PE field trips to really bring the joy and community back into biking education. Megan, welcome.
Hello, can you see my slides?
Indeed, we can.
Okay, I can see my notes on my side, but let me know if it's not running correctly. Okay, so thanks to Governor's Highway Safety Association for inviting me to present on this topic, which is very near and dear to my heart. So my name is Megan Ramey, and I'm the Safe Routes to School manager for Hood River County School District. I also vice chair the Columbia Area Transit, and my side hustle is bikeabout.com, a travel site for bike tourists with over 30 cities, towns, and trails. And I'm a music lover, hence the KEXB sweatshirt. If you know, you know it's the best radio station in the world. So here's my origin story in 6 parts. I grew up in Wisconsin Rapids, where I biked to school as a kindergartner. Second is our family moved to Peachtree City, Georgia when I was 14. It's home to a network of golf cart paths, but also entrenched in suburbia car culture. Third is attending University of Georgia in Athens, where I totaled my car and my dad handed me my bike. I then got around by bike and bus and felt more connected to my community. Fourth is a work abroad in London, where my feet in the tube were my transportation. And when I got home from that summer, my mom said my legs looked fantastic, but I felt very lonely getting in a car again. Fifth is I moved back to my birth city of Madison, a platinum biking city, to do an MBA. And lastly was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I carried my newborn to 5-year-old around on a bike. This is us biking on a brand new cycle track after I spoke at the ribbon cutting. So these are two graphics done by my friend Tom Flood. I highly recommend checking out his company, Rovello Creative. He is formerly of the auto advertising world, who was radicalized when he had kids and tried to bike them to school. On the left describes how I got into Safe Routes to School. And my cat's gonna photobomb, just to warn you. I just wanted to bike my kids to school, and now I spend more time at City Hall than my home. And on the right is sarcasm to illuminate the problem with typical Safe Routes to School programs, is this little girl saying, I ride perfectly when biking to school, so my counselor doesn't need political courage to build in a systems where I can make mistakes. So where is Hood River County? We are 60 miles east of Portland at the intersection of the Columbia Gorge River and the Cascade Mountain Range between Mount Hood and Adams. It's a very beautiful place to live. Hood River County has 24,000 people and 9 schools. So our Safe Routes to School history is brief but mighty. During COVID in October 2020, my daughter's principal asked me to organize a bike parade around the school so the staff could see the students. This turned into an everyday bike train, which I received ODOT funding for in 2021. That same year, I drafted a grant application for the city to win a Safe Routes to School planning process, which was adopted in 2022. A key recommendation of the plan was hiring a coordinator. And little did I know that when I was writing that grant application, I would be funding a job that was offered to me. And then in January 2023, I began an 80s walk and roll after school club, a partnership to the middle school demonstration. And in May 2024, we piloted a school street, which is closing a few streets around a school to vehicle traffic to roll out the red safety carpet to students who walk and bike. Both of those demonstrations are now becoming permanent installations. So 4 years after this little bike train that could, our Safe Routes to School Coalition has won 21 grants totaling $10 million. 1,800 students, K through 8th grade, have participated in bike rodeos in their PE classes. 200 students have received free bikes at home, courtesy of our partnership with our nonprofit Anson's Bike Buddies. And I've organized walk and roll events for 5 elementary schools 5 times a year, with Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day coming up in a couple weeks. So older folks ask, why don't kids go outside and play anymore? Well, this is the outside that we have collectively built for our kids. And on a local level, this is what it looks like. And this is in Hood River. This is a quote from a parent on the 2018 Safe Routes to School survey. We absolutely will not let our children walk or bike to school because the routes are not safe. There is no real bike lane or sidewalk, and the cars travel too fast. I would worry my children would never make it to or from school. So how do we break this vicious chicken and egg cycle? Well, I have 2 secrets of success. I like to get cheap demonstrations or quick builds on the ground to engage the public, and then getting the kids in the street to give them joy and show the public that they have a right to be there. And how this translates to our project that's relevant to Governor's Highway Safety Association is we were proud to help ODOT be one of the 5 states to win the Youth Active Transportation Grant from Governor's Highway Safety Association and the National Road Safety Foundation. $25,000 in funding helped me enact my 2 secrets of success for the historically disadvantaged community of Odell. This is a photo from last year's International Walk and Roll to School Day, or actually last month's, sorry, attended by over 100 families. For being a vulnerable community in statistics, they have so much hunger for change. The project was centered around Mid-Valley Elementary School, which you can see on the map in the bottom middle. The red dotted line represents the Puma Path we created to connect the neighborhood in the upper right corner to the school, bridging the barrier that is the highway. The green dots are student homes. The red line is the demonstration crosswalk. The photo on the right shows last year's, this would be 2023, last year's Walk and Roll to School Day. No sidewalks or separation from vehicles, yet we had 100 families walking and biking to school. And the objectives of the project were to create a safe 1/4 mile long walking path from the highway bisected neighborhood to the school, then activate that path with a weekly walking bus, provide a new fleet of kinder learning bikes, and lastly use carrots like gift cards for students and an e-bike giveaway to parents for their feedback. I partnered with our county engineer, Chris Harrell, who was a knight in shining armor on this project. He single-handedly shepherded the demonstration application through ODOT permitting. We hired a local contractor to install the crosswalk and ped crossing signage, and then members of my after-school bike club helped me paint the Puma Path arrows and stencils. Diamond Fruit is one of our many local fruit packers. They gave me permission to hang these banners with the local school mascots, the Pumas and Eagles, and information about the project. And then here are the banners up close. So every Thursday morning from the start of school to Halloween, which was last week, families were encouraged to join the walking school bus. Here is the walking school bus using the temporary crosswalk to get across the highway. And the Dutch say our children aren't made of sugar, they won't melt in the rain, which is very true of our children in Hood River County. This International Walk and Roll to School Day, you can see the demand and need for infrastructure in one photo. That's Mount Adams in the background. And then last Thursday, our last walking school bus, I brought caregivers coffee in exchange for their feedback on the Puma path. There is also an e-survey. This engagement will be used as a great pregame to our Safe Routes to School planning process that kicks off this January. And here's what the project looked like in real life. So it was serendipitous that mural in the background right there was created at the same time as the path. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. I look forward to answering questions about our project. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you to all of our speakers. Now my cat is making an appearance. One of the things that maybe people in the audience might not will totally understand is audio issues. So we will be posting this presentation and sending you the link afterwards. So if anybody in your office would like to hear more about these programs, then you can share it with them, or if you'd like to just review it. So I'd like to have our panelists back on camera, please. Now is the good stuff. Well, actually, it's the second edition of Good Stuff. We are going to have a conversation, ask some questions, and I really encourage you to use that Q&A box to ask any questions you have of our panelists. So without further ado, I don't know who wants to answer this one first. This was from our audience. The question is, do driver education courses offer a curriculum that speaks to transit, multimobility, micromobility? For some of the youth in rural communities, they think that there might not be access to motor vehicles, and that could be some reason why they don't have a license.
I think that's probably something I can address. So our driver's education curriculum it is really focused on safety behind the wheel. So it covers a lot in the 24 hours. It talks about how to be a safe driver around pedestrians and bicyclists and unexpected people or entities you might be sharing the road with. But if I'm understanding the question correctly, there would still obviously need to be access to a motor vehicle in those areas when they don't have access to Lyft or Uber or a bus system, that type of thing.
I have like a little, sorry. Just a quick response is that our Columbia Area Transit Agency is wonderful that we provide free gorge passes to all the students, 6th grade to 12th grade. And it's essentially like normally $40 a year, but they can go wherever they want to with this pass, including to the mountain, to ski, and to Portland. And so it's not incorporated into the driver education program yet, but a lot of students, it's wonderful because they are not feeling this crunch to get a driver's license yet, which I personally love.
And one thing that I found out this past year, which was really interesting, is working with Ford Philanthropy and the Ford Driving Skills for Life program, we incorporated a new module called Safety and Mobility, and it really focused on micromobility. We had e-scooters, all that. And the interesting thing was it was a little bit harder to schedule than we thought because apparently it's too far to bike, walk, or scoot for some of these kids in these communities. So riding in a car was the only option. So transit would also be an option as well. So actually, I have a question for, we'll start with Megan for this one, but it might be, other people might be interested in as well. And, you have been very successful in getting funding, really kudos and thanks to the National Road Safety Foundation for the Puma Path program, but sometimes it can be really daunting to start a new program. So what advice do you have for our attendees on getting that first step?
I'm blessed, or cursed, I would say. Either one, you can say. I'm entrepreneurial, and so I have a lot of ideas. And I've opened a organic convenience store that was like my past life, and so I'm not really. I actually, to a fault, will throw ideas out there and just get them on the ground, and not think about. Really whether it was like the best idea or not. So I would say right now I feel like I'm in a cash grabbing machine. I say this a lot, that there's so much money for active transportation. If you have an idea, just work with your partners. In like I have the school district, I have our CAT Transit, I have the city, the county, and so many partners that I can throw ideas to, and they will tell me, Megan, that's not going to work, or that's amazing. Let's go after the funding. And together we can make it happen.
So Emily, you also started a new program. So what are some of the challenges you faced getting your Drive to Succeed program off the ground?
Yeah, I think, working in state government, one thing that's always kind of resonated with me is the idea that you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So you kind of have to start somewhere. And that's really what we did with the Drive to Succeed program. Is we knew we needed to help find a way for individuals who just couldn't afford driver's education to get a scholarship to be able to attend. So we also know there's still a lot of other barriers, right, to becoming a licensed driver, such as a vehicle or car insurance. But, we might not be able to put out a perfect system today, but we can take steps in that direction to get started, to provide something that will get us just closer to that goalpost. So I think that really has kind of been my mission with this program and so many of our other programs. I think as far as a challenge, it's also just about identifying those right partners, even if they're ones that you might not have traditionally thought of. I mentioned in my presentation that we focused on kind of the workforce development angle for a lot of this, which is really why people need their license in Ohio, is to get to a job. So if that's the motivation to help students get their license, then that's the angle we will take, and getting them the education that they need to be a safe driver.
And Joanna, EATAC was brand new. You were able to bring in different partners. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to recruit so many of them? Because I understand you had an incredibly positive response rate.
We did. I think that a lot of times in school transportation, some of these at-risk youth are some of the ones that are the most overlooked because of the way that the traditional school transportation tends to work, right? Like a traditional bus route may not work for somebody who is in foster care or experiencing homelessness and moving frequently, right? And if you move at 10:30 at night, you cannot reroute a school bus to pick up that child the next day. But solutions like HopSkipDrive can make sure that that child gets to school with no interruption in schooling. And so when we started thinking about EATAC, we've built up over the years as we've been working in school transportation, just a lot of great partnerships and relationships with so many organizations who aren't necessarily thought of in traditional school transportation groups or modes. And so these were people who really advocate for the populations that we serve, who know how much transportation is a barrier and I think felt unheard in a lot of ways. And so when we approached them with the opportunity to create EATAC to really study the problem and propose solutions, I think people were really chomping at the bit to be involved. And it's been really exciting to see all of these different groups come together to advocate for people who don't always get advocated for.
I'm actually going to flip the question a little bit. This is from a member of our audience, which is, now that you have some experience, what do you wish you knew before you started based on what you learned now? And Joanna, maybe we'll toss it to you first, and Emily, Megan, second and third.
Yeah, we've learned so much. I think, when we started this company, my co-founders and I, we were really starting this as a consumer product to help busy families like ours. As a full-time working mom, I was really struggling with getting my kids where they needed to be safely and dependably. And that's really originally what HopSkipDrive was formed to address. And as we learned more, and as folks started reaching out to us, schools started reaching out to us, LA Child Welfare was reaching out to us, Los Angeles County, because they were really desperate to find solutions for school transportation for foster youth. And we became aware of a much bigger problem. But I think what we've learned is when you lead with mission, the problem that you're solving might expand, but ultimately it's really the same problem, which is about barriers to barriers to access, which is really barriers to opportunity. And so, we had no idea when we started that this is where it would go, or how big this problem really was, or how many people were impacted by it. But now it's what we wake up every day looking to solve.
Yeah, speaking about our grant program, things that I wish that I had kind of knew now, it's all been a learning process. So I've learned there are things I would do differently, of course, such as we would like to try to have a more statewide approach as opposed to just a localized approach. But I think doing it the way we did it the first time kind of got us to where we are, right? So it's been a good progression for us to start at a local level with 35 different local entities providing the services, the scholarships on the ground. But that's kind of leading us to, okay, what's the next iteration? How do we make this even better going forward, which is what we're looking at to provide a solution that would provide scholarships statewide.
So my declared major when I started undergrad at Auburn University was chemical engineering, and I wish I could go back and do a traffic engineering degree just so I could stamp drawings, because I find that the biggest barrier to getting infrastructure for safe infrastructure for kids is to have a stamped engineered drawing. And our county does not have the money to put like $50,000 or $100,000 out to hire an engineer just to get a sidewalk in. Like it's a little absurd. I just attended the Safe Routes to School conference last week. Shout out to those organizers. And they had Wes Marshall, who did Killed by a Traffic Engineer as the keynote. And he is remarkable about identifying how engineering is one of the issues with our safe streets. So yeah, I would love to be, I've even thought about, I should just go back and get a traffic engineering degree so I can solve this problem.
A little bit of what we're talking about today is being flexible and adaptive. So How would anybody from our panel, we can, whoever wants to go first, how do we ensure that transportation solutions for at-risk youth remains flexible, remains malleable and adaptive, especially as time goes on? Any takers?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think it's really important to remember that every kid's situation is unique, especially when we're talking about at-risk youth. And so it's really all about making sure that we're providing tools in the toolkit to come up with the best options for that particular child. It really needs to be kind of child-centric, whether that's tools to help a child get a driver's license so they can access job opportunities, whether it's tools to provide, walking buses or biking buses to school, or whether it's saying like, a traditional school bus route doesn't work for you, but here's a safe, dependable ride to get you to school that doesn't have you taking 3 different public buses through neighborhoods that may not be safe and might take 2+ hours, right? It's really about providing flexibility and making sure that everybody involved has a number of tools in their toolkits. And so building flexible systems that requires resources and coordination. But I think that's how we can make it work.
Yeah, I'll just echo Joanna. That's like dead on what we're trying to do in transportation advocacy is build a system where people have choices to make what's best for them. And the other part is I'll add is if we design our system for 8 to 80-year-olds to access both walking, biking, transit, and driving, then we'll be designing a much better system for our communities.
We did have a question submitted about trust, and there's some discussion about the communities that many of us are trying to serve, and the submitter of the question is really talking about public agencies in general. They'd love to help out these people, but these are the same groups that tend to be a little bit less trusting. He asked how do you go about earning that trust?
I can start with this one. I'm probably as close to the kids and the parents, besides being their actual teacher, that you can get between the state transportation agency and the actual students. I'm teaching them one-on-one how to bike in their PE classes, and it's still hard for me. So I've been very lucky, especially in Odell, the Mid-Valley PTO, parent teacher organization, huge shout out to them. They're incredibly involved, and they are essentially my trust negotiators, or I don't know how to explain it, but they every single walk and roll to school day, they provide coffee, hot chocolate, donuts, bananas, and it's so amazing to see how many kids come out. And then I get to talk about, infrastructure with them, because a lot of people, infrastructure and design is wonky and they don't really get it. So I would say the PTOs, just finding somebody or a principal that is can speak their language.
I think I would add to that, I think that the most successful transportation solutions come when we really partner with communities. Parents know which routes are unsafe for walking. Parents understand where public transit gaps exist. They're the ones living with the daily reality of getting their kids to school. But I think it really means meaningful engagement. I think means meeting families where they are. It means understanding that a lot of parents can't attend a midday planning meeting, or they might need language interpretation. And so we have to make engagement accessible and really listen to the community wisdom to earn that trust and to provide flexibility and options to earn that trust and really meet the community where they are.
This is my favorite question, I think, and I'm going to ask it of Emily and then Megan and then Joanna. What are your favorite go-to resources?
That's a good question. And I promise I'm not getting paid to say this, but honestly, GHSA's Young Driver and Traffic Fatalities Report, the 20 Years of Progress report, has been one of my office's go-to resources over the last year or two. It provides almost like a checklist for us of things that we need to think about when we're thinking about young drivers and traffic fatalities and how to reduce those, from strengthening GDL to making driver training accessible, which we've talked about here, parental involvement, use of technology, and peer-to-peer programs. These are all things that we're working on. So it's been really helpful to kind of have that guide for us of like how these pieces all come together, and then the resources within it as far as a lot of the references to what some other states have done. I'm a big proponent of working smarter, not harder. So then if I hear a good idea, I'm going to take it and try to modify it the best I can to work in my state and in my community. So being able to access all of that in one place has been, a real benefit to us, and just a real reinforcement, that we're on the right track. And even when we might have some challenges, just to see that, other states are having success in certain areas as well. So kudos to GHSA for that report.
I kind of have 3 tiers of resources. The first being actual like manuals or guides on infrastructure. So I use the Federal Highways Rural Design Guide. It's great for rural and small towns infrastructure. Then NACTO, National Association of City Transportation Officials, is a great guide, especially their ones designing cities for kids is like a Bible for me. Then I have, the sort of second tier, which are books, like to be informed as a professional, like the Wes Marshall book I showed you. Angie Schmidt wrote a great book of about the pedestrian fatality epidemic going on, just to be equipped with what's going on in terms of data. And then there's like the third tier of inspiration for resources, because we're all trying to, I would say me and a few other folks are trying to reinvent Safe Routes to School to actually get kids walking and biking to school again. Because at one point it was like 40% of kids walking and biking to school, and now it's, I think, nationally like 1 or 2. And so my friends on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn are like such a source of inspiration to me. I quickly want to give a shout out to my friend Sam Balto, who started the bike bus, and he and I have just been like, we'll call each other or text each other anytime we're having a bad day or we need help solving a problem. And those kind of resources are gold to me.
I think for us, I really love, the reason we started EATAC was to really bring a whole bunch of people who are way smarter than us in their particular fields together as a diverse group of voices to come together and learn from and listen to. And so that's something that we always try to do. And when I look at resources, I try to look at resources both within kind of within transportation expertise like GHSA, but then also looking at, mental health experts or experts in the child welfare community or the homelessness community to really understand multiple different viewpoints when designing tools. And really our community is a major resource for us. We are constantly listening to families, listening to school district clients, listening to care drivers who are really closest to the issues, who are on the roads every day, and learning from them to design solutions that work.
I have a few more. I just like now listening to you talk, I'm like, so there's so many good video casts right now. Active Towns is one, Not Just Bikes, and War on Cars. Those are all just amazing information, like all the professionals in the world that are working on transportation. Those are all really good.
We only have a few more minutes, so I'm going to ask about the future. So I guess this time we'll do Megan, Joanna, and then Emily. So what does the future hold for your program, the one that you talked about today?
I had to go first. I wish I could clone myself. I am finding that the education piece is so important. I mean, you look at the Netherlands and where they've come from, like early 1970s. They were a very car-centric country in the 1970s, and then the oil embargo happened, and the moms took to the street protesting the children's death, called the Kindermord campaign. And that at that same time, they started an education curriculum where every single student, like it was a rite of passage to pass essentially what is equivalent to our driver's test, but on bikes. And so if I could put a lot of energy and people behind not only teaching kids how to bike, but how to be confident on their bike. And then there's like the third level of how both walking, biking, transit, how they can be independent and get where they need to go without their parents. So that's like wayfinding and just logistics. It's like a lot for kids, but it's so important to ingrain that. That's kind of like where I want to take it in the next level, besides obvious infrastructure installation.
Yeah, I think, for us, EATAC is really just getting started. We've spent this last year kind of studying the problem, collecting information. We put out a report. Now it's about finding solutions, and then it's about advocating for those solutions. And so I think, it's continued research, advocacy, partnership building. We really want to transform transportation access from a barrier to a bridge, and we want to connect every student with the opportunities they deserve.
Yeah, for the state of Ohio, we are entering our next budget cycle process, which is really already underway, and we'll look at having a new budget July 1st of next year. So, that really dictates for us, what our funding looks like for future funding opportunities. But we're progressing full steam ahead to be able to keep providing scholarships and working through the administrative pieces in order to do that, trying to identify where we can streamline to make these accessible statewide, while also working on the other areas that are really important, like our parental involvement, increasing parental involvement, and using technology, whether that's like app-based technology or other technology to help provide students and parents, more informed feedback about their driving and their skills so they can be better prepared and safer drivers. So those are all things that we're kind of doing to try to move in the direction as we wait on our budget funding to be finalized.
There has been a lot packed into the last hour. I really want to thank HopSkipDrive for sponsoring this webinar, for our really rock star speakers. For those of you out there in webinar land, you might not know how hard they worked today and to prepare their presentations. And really, I hope that everybody is leaving with an idea for something that they can do. So please follow GHSA on our social media channels like LinkedIn and Facebook. We do have resources on our website. Not just the report that Emily mentioned, although we really appreciate that shout out. You can look at showcases to see what states are doing. You can search for bike ped and novice drivers. So you can pick something and maybe start having a conversation locally. So I hope everybody will join me in thanking HopSkipDrive and our panelists today. It has been a joy, and it's not too soon to start thinking about Pittsburgh for the annual meeting next year. I hope everybody has an amazing day. Thank you, everybody.